Working with immigrant children and their families, some of whom have experienced unimaginable trauma, could be extremely challenging for even the most experienced, tough attorneys. And it's critical to recognize that the emotional impact on the attorneys themselves could be substantial and may require some focused, informed attention.
Hearing children's stories and bearing witness to their experiences affects us as human beings, and it can result in stress for the provider or the interviewer, something that we call secondary stress or vicarious trauma, where we start to feel the same things that the children feel.
These families have come fleeing violence. So many have terrible, horrible stories that they have suffered, which force them to have to leave and bring their children or send their children by themselves. And those stories haunt all of us who have the privilege to work with them.
Hearing these stories from children and adolescents can be very traumatizing to the person involved, the interviewer, the lawyer, the physician. But we have to be able to understand that this is part of our responsibility as professionals.
The one situation that I am often in the middle of is taking people to juvenile immigration court, where the children who are unaccompanied, who are alone, have to come to court by themselves and sit in a courtroom and put the translator earphones on their head and listen to a translation of what the judge is saying in legalese, in language that even I don't understand. And these children, the first time I went, were from 6 years old to 17. So there was a dozen children stacked up from youngest to oldest, sitting in a bench in front of me. And I watched them go up, and I watched them sit on the bench and move their legs or be picking on something on their skin, but moving, or just sitting there, putting their head down. And then them going up and seeing children get so afraid that they got sick, so they would have to take them out of the room and explain to them or get them calmed down before they came back in. I am not in control of that situation. I can't lean over and hug the children. I can't touch them because we're not supposed to. And so every time I leave that courtroom, I go home and weep for the thousands of children that are asleep in facilities by themselves, not with their parents. They didn't get to their journey's end, and they're stuck here to fend for themselves.
I think the number one mistake is lawyers believe that they can do everything, and you can't. And what that leads to is severe burnout and severe secondary trauma super quick.
This type of secondary trauma occurs in first responders like police officers, firefighters, journalists. So it is not uncommon to see it in attorneys as well. And it doesn't manifest in people that have different temperaments. It can manifest on anyone. Any one of us can develop these post-traumatic symptoms after hearing histories of trauma.
Often the best approach is to make sure that any lawyer interviewing children who have gone through these kinds of experiences have a network of colleagues, friends, and family with whom they can talk about their own reactions.
You don't have to wait until you feel overwhelmed. Before conducting this interview or while conducting these interviews, you may want to create a support system for yourself or identify which counseling resources are out there for you. It is important that you understand that it's not a sign of weakness to have this need for support.
When you know that people are depending upon you for their very lives and safety, it can be very difficult to take a step back and be self-aware.
I'll see lawyers come in and put in 15, 16, 17, 18-hour days, multiple days in a row, and they're not eating and they're not sleeping. In the end, they become useless to themselves and to their clients. You have to rest, you have to eat right, you have to recharge, you have to give yourself a chance to step back so that you can focus. Take care of yourself.
One of the most important things I think we can do to any other human being we come in contact with, not just immigrants, is to recognize them as a human being and that they have intrinsic value and dignity, but always keeping in your knowledge that 90% or more of these families have been treated like animals. They've been humiliated, made fun of, they've been beaten, they have been spat upon, their food has been thrown at them to eat, and that the greatest thing that you can give them in that moment is your respect, your presence, and the importance of realizing that they have dignity.
When you're doing this kind of work, when people's lives and safety are so dependent on your efforts, it can be hard to step back, to be self-aware. But that kind of awareness and self-care is an essential part of this work.